What's going on, everyone? Brian from Drywall Nation here. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to set up your automatic taper, as well as familiarizing yourself with all the basic parts and functions. We've teamed up with Level 5 Tools to bring you this educational series. However, almost everything you'll learn in this video applies to every major brand of taping tools, with the exception of maybe one or two that might have slightly different designs. So let's just jump right into it. What exactly is an automatic taper? Well, it's a tool that allows you to simultaneously apply your joint compound and your tape at the same time. So let's start at the bottom of the tool and work our way up. The first thing we're going to look at is our creaser trigger. So the creaser trigger allows you to lift your creaser wheel and fold your tape into the corner. As we continue working our way up the tool, next we're going to want to place our roll of tape on the tape dispenser. We want to do so that the tape rolls from the bottom of the roll up to the head of the machine, unwinding clockwise as you look at the roll. The reason for this is that when the tape is twisted to go into the head, the twist is the right way so that it doesn't interfere with our control sleeve. You also want to make sure that when you're feeding your tape through, that you twist it the right direction. There's a front and back to paper tape. Where the crease is, there's obviously a peak there, so you want to make sure that when you're feeding it through, the peak is at the back side of the machine, so that when it feeds out on top of your drive gears, that peak is against the wall and not facing outwards. Same thing applies with any tape that has a front and back side. I'm holding the new FiberFuse Max, which has the blue reinforced fibers. So when you're feeding that through the tape, because the blue side is supposed to be against the wall, you want to make sure that when you twist it, the blue fibers are at the back side of the tool, so that when it comes up and over the drive wheels, that's what's going to be applied against the wall. Also worth mentioning is what kind of tapes can and can't be used through an automatic taper. So it works with any standard size 2 1/16 tape. It does not work with fiberglass mesh tape. It does work with FiberFuse, paper tape, as well as the new FiberFuse Max. So now that we've twisted our tape the right way and have fed it through our head assembly, next we're going to take a look at our control sleeve. So the control sleeve has three basic functions. The first one is the neutral position, so it just naturally sits there. The second is being able to lift it to advance your tape. So you can keep returning to the neutral position and keep raising it to keep advancing more and more tape. When you're ready to cut that tape, you return to the neutral position and you pull down in order to cut that tape. So very simple. Raise up to advance, pull down to cut. Always returning to the neutral position in between. Let's take a closer look at some of the wearable parts that allow for the cutting and advancing of the tape. When you raise your control sleeve, you're actuating an adjustable needle that raises the tape. Once the control sleeve reaches its top position, it hits a bracket which releases the needle from the tape, allowing the needle to return to the neutral position and start over again. If your needle isn't advancing your tape properly, you may need to adjust your needle to apply more pressure. To do so, we're going to engage our creaser trigger to get it out of the way. We're going to lift our control sleeve so that it reaches that top bracket and disengages the needle. And now we're able to get our screwdriver on the side here. We're able to release the tension on that set screw and move our needle forward or back to apply more pressure or less pressure. If you're using paper tape in your automatic taper, you'll want the needle to be a little far forward so that it has enough pressure to pierce through the tape in order to raise it. If you're using FiberFuse, you want to back the needle up so there's a little less pressure. When you're advancing your tape, if the needle's too far forward, it does have a tendency to just tear the tape in half. So back up that needle if you're using FiberFuse just enough so that it catches and it'll work wonders for you. Now we're going to take a look at our cutting blade. You can't actually see the blade right now because it's inside the cutting block, but as we mentioned before, when you pull down on your control sleeve, it actuates your cutter chain assembly. So we're going to go ahead and pull on it, and if I hold it down, you can see the side of the blade right here. To replace your cutting blade, you simply loosen your chain assembly on the side here. You're able to lift that up, and you're able to pull your cutting block out from the side, and there's a little set screw there that you can loosen in order to replace your blade. Another part I want to mention is the adjustable brake. This is located under your creaser wheel, and what it is a little lever that you can slide back and forth, and what that does is it applies pressure to your drive wheel. So you can see right now this is spinning pretty freely, and if we pull that brake forward, we're adjusting a little more pressure to the wheel, and you can see there's a little more resistance now. It's not spinning as freely. So the more pressure you apply, the more drag you're going to get on your tape. So we like to set this back as far back as possible without the drive wheels actually rolling backwards. So that's running pretty freely, and if we try to go back, it's not letting us roll backwards. So that's what we're looking for. You'll have a lot less drag in your tape that way. So now let's take a look at the head assembly. We're going to go ahead and remove the quick clean cover plate so that we can show you the inner workings so that you have a better understanding of how everything works. On the right side of the taper is a small hook-shaped lever that operates the mud gate. The gate lever strikes against a rounded disc when it's pushed down. The disc needs to be pushed down before the lever can be set in the downward position. The disc is connected to a shaft which engages and disengages the drive mechanism. This drive mechanism is what turns the drum, which winds up your cable and pulls the plunger, dispensing your mud. So we'll show you an example of what it would look like if you were to try to fill this with your mud gate open and your drive mechanism engaged. So when you flip this upside down onto the filler nozzle and you try to pump it up, if your mud gate is open, the plunger won't go down. Essentially what's going to happen is all the mud is just going to flow out that gate and overflow your head, and you're going to have a giant mess. So that's why you need to disengage your drive mechanism by pushing down on the disc, pushing your little hook-shaped lever down, and simultaneously closing the mud gate. When you close that mud gate, the mud can't come out through the front of the head, so it forces the plunger down. So as you flip this upside down onto your pump and you start pumping, we'll show you kind of what that would look like by using this rod. So with your mechanism disengaged, when that mud starts to fill up, your plunger starts to go down, unwinding the cable. When you're ready to start taping, you re-engage your drive mechanism, and when your tape is pinched to the drive wheel, as you start to advance, that drive mechanism winds that cable back up, advancing your mud. So when your plunger reaches the top of the head and you run out of mud, there's a little safety pin that's built into your quick clean cover plate, which actuates a lever which disengages your drive mechanism so you don't accidentally wind the cable too much and snap it. So now that we've gone over all the basic parts and functions of an automatic taper, you can see just how many moving and wearable parts there are on one. So this is a good time to mention that if you're buying an automatic taper, you should seriously consider buying a taper repair kit. That way, if anything needs to be changed, you have all the parts on hand and you're not losing downtime on your job waiting for a $2 or $5 part. You can fix that on site and be up and running within a matter of minutes. So we've got our pump all set up. We're gonna go ahead and drop that in the mud. And before we put our taper on here, we want to make sure that we prime the pump a few times. This just ensures that we get all of the air out of the pump in the gooseneck. So we're going to keep pumping here until we see a little bit of mud come out the top. There we go. So now we're ready to take our taper, flip it upside down and start pumping up, and we know that there's not going to be any air that comes up through the tube. So now we're ready to fill our automatic taper. The first thing we're going to do, like we mentioned before, is push down on our disc, lower this lever, which disengages our drive mechanism. Now we're going to flip the automatic taper upside down, and we're going to put this nozzle on the hole of our gooseneck. Just like that. We're going to push down firmly onto the gooseneck. So this typically takes about 8 to 9 pumps to fill the tube completely. What you want to do is put your hand at the top of the tube when you start pumping. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. You also want to make sure that you have your foot on the pump so the pump isn't shaking all over. 5, 6, and you can actually hear the sound of the plunger raising. 7, 8, and 9, and a little bit more. There we go. I can feel the plunger coming up at the top, so you know to stop. You don't want to overflow your automatic taper. As soon as you feel it start to hit your fingers, you know you're full. Now we can take our taper, re-engage our drive mechanism, and if we start to advance, there you go. You can see there's mud on the tape there. So I hope that video was helpful. Now you're all set to start taping with your new automatic taper. For more tips and tricks, make sure to check out our other educational videos with Level 5 tools.